Did you leave your popcorn at Grandma Ree's?
Yeah. Because we don't need to add 10 minutes to report meeting from us just sitting here chit chatting, so.
The only one's not staring at her phones. You heard the old ones? Flip phone.
Mine's plugged in.
Okay,
In my office, I try not to bring it here because
it's
There's no
distracting or
what?
because it's
It
distracting?
is distracting and I've been playing Merge Dragons and I shouldn't play that because it's like a time sucker.
It's addicting. I've played that too.
It's like no interest. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, on purpose.
Early bird gets the seat.
Sit right here, there's a nice table here.
Take that little bitty chair. Hey, that's just smart.
No,
You hear some snoring?
Just ignore it, look the other way.
What?
Just ignore it, look the other way.
Exactly.
All right.
Do you have a face cam?
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Couldn't find the other one, so.
That's a new problem everybody has now.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, my spare.
yeah.
My
A
husband
lot of
has
times I can't find it.
on
It's
his way to
just down
Madison
here.
for an appointment, forgot to grab a mask. So he's like, I'm like, just go to a store and pick one up. So he goes to the store, they're like, you can't come in here without a mask. He's like, but I need to get in there and buy a mask.
Curbside.
Yeah. Curbside mask delivery. He ended up getting one, it was fine, but it's just
It smells like a barn.
That's weird.
7 o'clock. Call to order, verification of meeting notice.
It was emailed out. On the cabinets.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Blazinski.
Here.
Mr. Brisboy.
Here.
Mrs. Variance.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Manning.
Here.
Mrs. Peterson.
Here.
Mrs. Rowe.
Here.
Item 3, approval of the agenda.
I would so move.
Moved by Mr. Brisboy to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Peterson. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 4 then, discussion possible action on status of in-person schooling.
All right, so since we've met last, we have now 2 elementary students and 1 high school student has tested positive. Shut up. 2 cast members. I'm gonna mute everybody, just so you know.
Siblings fighting in our meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, so 2 adults, one's gonna return tomorrow, she's all healthy and great, good to go, and 1 just found out on Friday, I believe it was. So Kathleen does most of the subbing, not subbing, making sure that we have subs for all the buildings because of circumstances. When you're close contact, you have to go home for 10 days. We have 5 staff members returning tomorrow off of their 14 days of isolation. So that's a good thing. I just found out this afternoon, about 3 o'clock, that we do have 1 high school student. I did send an email out. I try and do that every time we hear something. The difference between the 2 elementary kids is that we can cohort that class. High school, it's the whole high school. They're not cohorted. So that's going to bear discussion because that has relevance on tomorrow. And again, the student has stated they have been very vigilant in maintaining mask wearing and 6 feet. So we have to look at the whole picture. I don't know if anybody has specific questions. I would still like to stay open. I mean, That's my bottom line. I want the kids to be here. I have gotten both sides of the argument. We shouldn't be open. We should be open. Way vast majority of the parents want us to stay open. But when you have, like I said, the high school, now there's one student that's in, 8 different classrooms and a lunchroom. Again, that student is very confident that they have not, gotten too close to anybody. They're very vigilant about washing their hands and they're very vigilant about their social distancing. What does that, what does that mean for our high school?
What did Rose say? Or what has Rose said?
We didn't talk to Rose on this one. Kathleen usually does the phone calling with them. Kathleen, you on? Can you talk to Brandy?
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So I talked to Brandy today. She did suggest that we contact Rose regarding staying open or closing.
And I invited Rose tonight and she's unable to make it.
Just, as I talked to Sauk County Health today as well, and I've talked to other people. It appears just in our little region, schools are all over. So River Valley and Riverdale are not quarantining classes. We are, and I believe Richland is.
Cohorting?
No, I mean quarantining the entire class.
Okay.
So Riverdale has had positive in the elementary and they only send home the sick children or kids that are real close, not the entire classroom. Same with River Valley. River Valley's had a positive high school student. That student stayed home. The rest of the class, and they are block schedule at River Valley, they did not quarantine or send home the rest of the high school that would have been with that student. So just for information.
Anything else?
That's our big thing. I have mentioned before that if we were gonna close, it's probably because we don't have enough staff. But with 5 people coming back tomorrow, we're doing pretty good. They either got over it or they never had it, but we still quarantine. So, I'm not worried about middle school or elementary because again, if one student tests positive, we can empty that room out. High school, knowing the student, I know that they're maintaining their distance. And again, I don't think that we should shut down just because one student was positive. But I'm guided by you guys. I want the kids here. I want them to be learning.
What's the involvement in the extracurricular?
It is a sport child and the coach does know about that.
So would we notify a school if we're going to play them like Hillsborough did with us?
We already canceled a
Okay.
game for tomorrow night.
So the coach must have taken care of that. But I can tell you that the coach talked to somebody that we played, ended up having like the very next day a COVID positive person on their team. And none of our players got it from their team and none of their team got it from their team member. Because again, they're distancing and masking and washing. So I think what we're doing is assisting. Schools are a little bit more particular about what you do, what you wash, all that kind of stuff. Whereas when you walk into Walmart, everybody can touch everything. Not saying that it's a bad thing, it's just, that's what you do. You walk in, you look at something, you put it back.
We haven't been able to talk to Rose today, but what was, somebody talked to her last week, I'm assuming, right? Because it's my understanding that she recommended Richland County schools.
The way it was on the radio was most unfortunate because if it was only supposed to be Richland Center schools, that's how it should have been stated. And it was stated, just like you said, Richland County.
So I was on the phone call with Mr. Burke and Rose. And I point blank said, do you want us to close? And she goes, well, it would be a good thing. And I said, but at the time, we only had 2 kids that had it. And we were confident that we had sent home those 2 cohorts and the rest of the building was unaffected. And I said, if you want to order us to close, tell me right away, order me to close, I'll close. I have 0 problem with that. Oh, well, I'm not going to order you. So she talked to Jared and Mr. Burke, and they had an emergency board meeting, and they decided because they had, I know they had a high school student who was also in a sport. So they had a game that night. They canceled the game. And so that's just what they chose to do.
It would be difficult just seeing what I have from the different extracurriculars out about. It would be difficult to say that one child has not exposed other children and how those operate. I don't know who it is, but just seeing the different groups together, as much as we keep them apart, they have masks on and stuff, there is a lot of close contact. There's no doubt about it.
County officials really strongly suggested you don't need a big group. It worked out very well, I thought, Monday night.
Hello, is somebody talking on the Zoom? If you are, could you speak up?
But he got back here, he got out of here like what they would. But
I can't mute the telephones.
be interested if it takes the third week of the month.
Not so far. Let me keep going if there's anybody else. If you want to say something, please say something. We have a lot of people on this. And I have 3 chats. Oh, Julie Thompson is on, and she stated that they did not cancel exclusive because of the COVID positive player. And then Adam said if we don't shut down for a single student in high school, do we have a particular number that would cause an at-home learning scenario?
So what do the staff think? Like, how is their general feeling? I mean, they're kind of like our frontline essential workers, basically, so just curious where they are, what page they're on.
Staff,
I mean,
If anybody wants to.
does anybody want to speak up, especially somebody in the high school or middle school?
Well, I think we're going to look at who that student had close contact with, and then we will see tomorrow how many people it was. Remember, it's got to be 15 minutes in a 24-hour period within 6 feet. So we plan on doing that tomorrow.
But all the students, I mean, I don't want them to come back if the board wants. I talked to the parent and the child, talked to the parent and knows our rules. And the child insists that other than at lunch, and those 2 students that sit at the same lunch table but 6 feet apart have been contacted.
Yep, that's
This
so
is
far what we know.
Okay, Melissa?
But and I'm not speaking for everyone in the high school, so please don't think this is like popular opinion. I know there's a couple other teachers that feel the same way I do. And I just want to say that I think Julie, you and Kathleen and Chris have been doing a great job of keeping kids that are like either suspected positive or suspected exposure and getting them out of the school quickly to where we're keeping things able to stay open. For me and my classroom and just some of the kids that I have, because I do have several special ed kids, I do have several group home kids, it is so much easier to have those kids in person than virtual. And if we are looking at a kid who has had limited exposure to our staff and other students, and you guys feel that it's safe for us to be there with those kids, I'm fine with being there. I don't have any problem with that. My personal feeling is we're not spreading it at school. Where it's getting spread is at home, at parties, at get-togethers, at whatever else they're doing outside of school. And if those kids are being honest with us as far as who they're in contact with, then, and you guys are able to contact those people and those people stay home until they get a, either a negative or they've been quarantined for so many days, I feel comfortable. Now, again, like I said, I'm not speaking for the entire staff. I'm speaking for myself, and there was a couple other teachers that agreed with me in the high school.
And I'll speak, there's a few elementary, but I'll speak, we've talked a lot about in-person learning is best. One thing that I will, having talked to this student and the student's parent and Rose lots of hours, small symptoms are everything. This student nor her parent know where she came in contact with a positive case. There's no known contact around them. So small things that happen at school, masks not being worn correctly, kids having runny noses and brushing it off, that can be a positive case. And if we are not all taking it seriously, it will quickly spread.
So Mrs. Bailey typed in the chat, we need to take into consideration the capacity at the hospital. Is the hospital full? On our last meeting, which was a Tuesday, for our EOC meeting with the county, the hospital is not full. As a matter of fact, they only had 2 people that were currently hospitalized with a positive COVID. That might have changed since Tuesday.
This is Carolyn
Oh,
Anderson.
hi, Carolyn.
Hello.
Hi, Carol.
Hey, Rand, the biggest problem at the hospital is not our inpatient unit right now. Our urgent care is handling getting upwards to 200 phone calls a day. It's been filled every day. Our drive-through, we extended it all days, half days. The county can't keep up with the number of tests that people want to run on the Mondays. And so that's where our issues lie. We're trying to hold flu clinics. We've asked each provider to cut back a clinic day so that we have enough staff to be able to test people. So the inpatient numbers really don't reflect where our challenges are at related to staffing. And then, we're like everybody else in the area. We have employees who have been positive, family members who are positive, which means we lose the employee. Their children are positive, so we lose the employee. And it's 2 weeks out that we have to cover these employees. And I will tell you the numbers of positives, it'll be easily doubled again by next week if it keeps on the same path that we're on. So, Logan wants to be in school. I would love him to be in school, but I think we have to be prepared for the reality that it's just days for us right now, that you're going to have a high majority of your families who are going to be either positive or on quarantine because of a positive in their house. So just kind of taking that into perspective, we tried to give out education to the families in all the school districts around on how to handle this. But the reality is it is spreading fast and furious, and I think we're just kind of dazed to the reality of having to sit home. So kind of what's happening on the hospital end and how I see it. I agree with all the reasons for being in classroom, and I have a son that's begging me to keep him there, and I would love to keep him there. And if it's open, we'll send him. But we just need to be prepared. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Another teacher commented, Heather Owen, in-person learning is best as long as it is manageable to keep people healthy. And Mr. Brown said, is there a scenario where the district would consider shutting down the high school that doesn't operate in cohorts while keeping the elementary and middle school open where you can isolate affected parties? And that's very feasible, that we could shut down the high school for 2 weeks and leave elementary and middle school
I
alone.
know that's what Kickapoo is currently doing,
Yep.
because I work with a lady and that's what her kids are doing. and stuff.
I know you mentioned River Valley too, and where there was a positive case, but there were a lot of kids that are not in school for 2 weeks because of exposure to that single case,
Okay.
just from teachers that are there.
Well, and I actually got, I've gotten a couple of phone calls from parents that they found out they or a close relative was positive and they're yanking their kid from school preemptively. So they may have been exposed, might not have been exposed, but the parents like, I don't want them in school to get it for everybody else to get it. So I'm like, the parents are very helpful in this. They get it, they understand, you know, we're trying to keep everybody healthy. So yeah, a couple of parents have done that.
This is Michelle Wabshall. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid to say my son is one of the students who tested positive for COVID. And I can attest that it's not all about how much you do to keep yourself safe as it is how he got it. I have no clue. He masks during the school day and everything, but I can say I went and got tested at the same time he did. He was positive, I was negative. So the doctor ordered, he is like considered quote unquote the contagious stage for the first 10 days from the day he said had symptoms. Then our family quarantine starts at 14 days after his 10 days. So I am not able to return to work until October 21st. So, you know, I can still teach virtually, it's fine and all that. But as a staff member, because I know I heard one board member a while ago ask, and I'm certainly not going to speak for every staff member, but that is one of my biggest concerns is just how are we going to staff it? If in fact it is spreading as rampantly as the numbers are showing, and like Carolyn mentioned, and it is only a matter of days before we go virtual, personally, I'd rather see us plan ahead and say, okay, we're going to start virtual maybe Monday so that kids can take home stuff they need and we're not having a repeat of in March where all of a sudden our numbers are up and now we have to close and we can't send everything home, because my kids in my classroom ended up being that way because of a positive from a student in my classroom. So we went home last week, Tuesday, just taking what we thought we needed. And then all of a sudden, because the student had tested positive, now my classroom had to be virtual and they had no materials with them. Now we've made do, but like they don't have their reading books. I mean, so many things where again, we're kind of set where we were. And then, you know, poor Mrs. Price comes back and, you know, she's trying to teach my kids virtually in the classroom where her kids are trying to learn from me virtually. And I mean, again, we've made it work, but if it's spreading as rapidly as it is, and it's going to keep going that way, I do have concern that maybe staying in person as long as, you know, we all know it is the best, but holy cow, at what point is like, we really need to be proactive and, you know, consider everyone's health and what's best, you know, if we are going to go virtual and it is only days, how can we get the kids the stuff they need and not have a redo of the spring? So a long 2 cents worth, but that's my thoughts for right now.
Amy Fry typed in the chat, this is about community spread, not about how well we are staying safe at school. We can't control what kids and parents do outside of school, and I see lots of people without masks and not social distancing in town. Adam thanked Carolyn. So did Sarah Bailey, and she also asked Carolyn if she felt that Ithaca School District staying open that will negatively impact the hospital.
This is Carolyn. I can talk faster than I can type.
You're fine.
I don't know that Ithaca School being open will be a sole factor in tipping us over the edge. I think the spread is so wide in the county that, any gatherings are going to spread it even more. And, tell you we did all testing at the hospital, and employee that we that turned out to be positive was asymptomatic. No fever, no cough, headache, no symptoms at all. They were laughing when we tested them, feeling really good. So for most cases, especially school age cases, it's impossible to tell if they're positive or negative, and impossible to tell oftentimes where even picked it up from. So I think there's a high risk of spreading it wider. Stay open, but it's so widespread right now that I don't know that. I am surprised that public health hasn't closed after this week's test results though in the county.
I actually like the idea of planning a closure for at least the high school for Tuesday, for Monday.
Given our only neighbor in the county is Richland Center, do we know if they just had the single positive case and that's why they are virtual, or?
They had at least 2 staff members that I'm aware of.
Okay,
One might have been just a coach and not quite clear.
sure.
Don't quote me on any of that.
They had more than one student though, didn't they?
Yeah, they had more than one student. They did have a student in high school that was also on football. So,
They're also tracking, I was in that emergency meeting, I zoomed in on Friday. So then when Jared did a screen share, they're tracking COVID positives and COVID symptom, like, if you have, 2, 3 symptoms, whatever. So they had like 42 or something, or you probably don't, but it was like, they had the list and you could see the numbers going up, and they were up to 42, I think 42, 38, 42, somewhere in that neighborhood by then. But that wasn't all COVID positive. It was, COVID-like symptoms, and they're tracking all that. So I guess they didn't have just the COVID numbers broken out in the chart.
Well, that's the fear, right? That we have an asymptomatic person who's in contact.
I would just about guarantee.
oh yeah, I'm sure we do. Yeah, if you're asymptomatic and you haven't gotten tested.
Yeah.
They won't test you.
No.
Yeah, this is about the only county that won't, which is kind of unfortunate.
I will mention one other thing, just because I don't want to forget it. All of our thermometers are not working in cold weather. They worked not well last week, but they're working better this week because it's warmer. But just so you know, I don't know how to fix that problem. If you're outside of a bus taking somebody's temperature,
Meant for outdoors.
Yeah.
they're not meant for outdoors. And we have only had one person that had a fever before they came in the building. And that person ended up not being positive for anything. Nobody could get the fever to register anymore. So we might have to discontinue that. It's not a major symptom. It's one of the, well, if you have 2 or 3 that on the sheet, it's on the bottom, you have to have 2 of the ones on the bottom, only 1 on the top. And it's the runny nose and the no taste. Those are the ones that are popping, not the fever.
Yeah, and I mean, the cold and the flu isn't gonna go away.
Right.
We're rolling into that season as well, and ragweed and all these other things that people have trouble with in fall, so.
If it was a planned closure, would it be hypothetically Monday and then you stay closed for 2 weeks, or do you reevaluate through that?
No, I think we would close for a set amount of time and allow the county to recuperate a little bit, reevaluate at maybe the midpoint to see if we didn't need, if the numbers are still going up, it wouldn't make any sense to open.
Right.
But like, it makes sense to have a set period.
If it's okay, I want to speak real quick. I know with Richland Center, the reason they canceled their game, it wasn't that they had a player that tested positive. It was actually a volleyball player. It was just that Burke and them having that emergency meeting, they thought they should take it serious enough to cancel the game because none of the football players had tested positive for anything. That my thing's going to be for Ithaca because my kid goes there. If we're going to close like this, we're going to end up punishing the kids for something they have not done wrong. Our kids have been wearing their masks like they're supposed to be, keeping their distance. So because the community doesn't want to follow the right rules and do what they're supposed to do right, I feel like if we shut down, we're telling them that if you do the right thing, sometimes you're going to basically get punished for it, where if we do shut down, make sure let them know it's like a 2-week period, not like it was last year where it's just completely shut down and you're done. Because again, it's not that there's big positive tests at the schools, it's more of the community that's doing this.
Mrs. Fargen typed in, I believe that we all agree that the most quality learning is when children are well and in person. However, very little or poor learning will occur if children and families are ill. Perhaps we can still have a mediocre learning environment by keeping the well kids and families well by closing. And Mrs. Thompson typed in, how can we expect families to seek testing if they know it will keep the rest of their family from going to school, work, or sports? If we can't receive testing in Richland Center and the consequences of testing are very unfavorable for families, how can we even predict that our infections are limited to 3 students? And Adam said staying safe is not a punishment. And Mrs. Barron's put in, we need to be concerned for the staff's health.
I just received a Facebook message I want to share. Kickapoo posted it. Hang on a second, I can bring it up. Kickapoo posted this 2 hours ago. I am sending this notification a day early so that families may begin to plan for virtual instruction. The Richland County 14-day case count has exceeded the threshold of 50 cases per 10,000 residents. The Kickapoo instructional model will move to virtual for 4K through 5th grade starting October 12th. It is highly likely that parents need to plan on this continuing until October 30th. Informational purposes only.
To me, I think the biggest change is the learning part is how fast the numbers have come up in the last week. And with so much of it being asymptomatic, you know, people don't even have it. I don't think we're anywhere near the peak of that yet.
No, I think it's going to grow.
I think so many people spread it with, you know, even still trying to be careful in that, but not knowing they have it. You inadvertently expose a family member or somebody else to it. And
So which way is everybody leaning?
I'm leaning virtual. But yeah, the notice would be nice, so maybe like starting Monday or something, gives them 2 days to wrap up their business and, yeah.
I don't think we're gonna change much exposure between now and Friday, you know, and then at least you have a plan and then do it for 2 weeks and then reevaluate.
Is this for high school or all
Say everybody.
K through 12?
I mean, because you're still running buses, you're still doing. Exactly, right.
Then, but pictures are in that 2-week time frame, so that would have to be looked at too, right?
Yeah, we'll reschedule pictures.
Okay, I just thought of that because that email went out today, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate sticking all that stuff in the same email, but I don't want to inundate people with tons of emails either, so.
Yeah, no, it just happened to be in my head because of that, so.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, anybody else? What are you thinking, Linda?
Well, you know, I was very sad when we got the email from Zach told me about the JV high school game and how our fans, there were several that didn't mask. And I just found that so hard to believe. So I'm in agreement with the person. I think our kids here are doing everything they're supposed to, but there isn't necessarily the guidance at home. And consequently, you know, we may not be able to have the face-to-face, which would be the most important. I don't know. I think where the cohorting has gone on and those things, and I hate to see taking the sports away from our high schoolers, but unfortunately, you know, we had the one game and the line was crossed.
Hey, Linda.
I don't know. I think I'm just torn, but I think maybe the high school does need to go virtual.
Chris, you had a question?
No, just a comment. At the Monday game, which was at Ithaca, every single person was masked, including the opposing parents. So I think they did get the message. Mr. Tomei and I were there, and honest to God, every single person had their mask on.
Well, that's good to hear, Chris. It's too bad it didn't happen at Highland.
Right.
So some more comments. Kickapoo's announcement is one of the reasons why Mrs. Thompson pressed to have the Labarge game canceled because of the numbers that are going up in that area. Sarah Jones says that, but if RC's number keep going up, you will continue prolonging in person. Correct. I think that is what Michael was trying to say. So what would the plan to come back to school? I don't see an end in sight then. It will just continue like this. And Jody Abarca, testing at Alliance Center went really well. I got all 4 of my kids tested last week and got the results in 2 days. You can pre-register online and it goes very smoothly. Kirsten Rasmussen, are there any suggestions for families that have 2 full-time working parents? And Jill Plonka, if you decide to go virtual on Monday, please have a plan in place for returning, i.e. COVID numbers are decreasing or not increasing. Otherwise, like Sarah Jones said, there might not be an end in sight.
And I do think with our younger population where the parents are working, if all of a sudden our kids are now going to be in daycare situations where we've got them from this school,
Yeah.
this area, you know, where they're here, they're in cohort. You know, I don't know about those that have siblings that are in high school, but
service.
and some of the daycares may be reluctant to take some of these kids. I mean, it's not because, but they have to keep their numbers to a certain percentage too. They can't go to full capacity. So.
Yeah, that's a real concern. We've had it affected our family. My daughter, she couldn't take just because of that exact reason. So that's a concern.
there are so many outliers when it comes to this kind of thing that it's hard to, every family is a different scenario. I think what we really have to do is just what is best for our kids, our staff, and know that we're not unique. Look at all those districts around who are going virtual for weeks or.
Well, and I know like St. Prairie is closed until January. They just made that decision.
And it's changing every day. Like it's very hard. I mean, I understand everyone's, we don't want to take anything away from our kids. I bleed purple, for goodness sakes. I love all extras, but we have to be safe first.
So Heather Owen says, and not to mention with waiting on devices to still be delivered to school, some families do not have technology devices to access Schoology, et cetera. This could create a hurdle as well. Chris Willis says cohorts are not offering total protection. Middle school teachers go from room to room. Becca Keller says daycares will be expected to take these younger kids on. So what is the difference if they are in school or at daycare? Holly Nelson said, have all the classes gotten technology needed to be successful at home? No, Holly, we're still waiting on the K-2 Chrome tabs. Kirsten Rasmussen typed in, I duly appreciate having the parents having a choice. And Carolyn says there's no right answer here. These decisions are tough. We need to stick together as a district and do our best.
The only thing I noticed since Richland Center's been virtual, just being at Walmart because I'm there full-time all the time, because I do see a lot of kids there. And some of those kids don't wear masks. It's just a fight and everything. And I just don't want to see the kids in there as well. I need to make it harder for them so they can't come in, you know what I'm saying?
We should be in school.
I
You'd hope
personally think
so.
they're safer in school
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
than what they are out there.
Because I see tons of them, because I'm like, how come you're not online? And it would be like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock time frame where they should be online. You know they should.
Yeah.
Would I be able to jump in quick?
Yes.
So I got 2 thoughts on this, and I agree with a lot of what's been said about, you guys have a very difficult decision to make. And I think it was Melissa that mentioned that, obviously with the students that I work with, a good deal of them, they need to have that in-person learning each day. That, obviously helps them, keeps them accountable, keeps them on task. And one of the things that I think has started to happen is as the case numbers have gone up, I've seen more and more of my students go virtual already. And so what's kind of happening is in my small group, I would normally have 4 to 5 students in a group, and now I've got 2 or 3 virtual and 2 or 3 in the classroom. So I think some parents are kind of already moving in this direction. And the second thought that I have just from a personal perspective is with students in Ithaca School as well as teaching, right now our kids are able to go to school. We haven't tested positive, thank God. But I do know that at least in my personal situation, that if one of us does test positive and we're all required to quarantine, we're going to have 3 people in person learning and 1 person trying to teach in the same household, which is going to be very difficult. So there's a lot of things to think about. At least if we go virtual, I'll have the option to go to my classroom and teach virtually from there. Whereas if I have to quarantine, it creates a whole nother set of challenges, at least for me. And I'm probably not the only staff member who's going to be in that situation.
Any other questions, comments? Anyone else on the points made about if we do go virtual, what will our end target look like? What will we use for okay, if we see this, then we can return. I think those are valid points.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because we have been using, I mean, if we would have closed earlier had we used just the county numbers, but in the building numbers we were using. So, the 50 per, it's 50 per 10,000 people case rate. And I'm pretty sure that Kickapoo uses the Minnesota model. If we were using the Sauk County model, we would also be closed. But again, that takes different things into account. If you're just talking about how many students have it or how many staff have it, and that's a rolling number also. You could be out but not have it. So we did have, the 2 staff members and 3 students now that have had it. But as of tomorrow, the first wave is coming back that is either recovered or never had it, but they had isolated. So again, I don't know if that's the numbers you guys want to play with a little bit, or you want to just look at the per capita, per 10,000, the rate. A lot of times they do a 2-week rolling rate. So Sauk County uses.
I think with the way we started out very proactive with the 4K through middle school as far as the cohorts. Some of the schools 2 weeks in made that decision to quick, we better. Well, they already had issues. So the cohorting didn't necessarily work for them. But I think we went in with a much stronger approach, and it's just a tough one because like Kelly said, and like Randy said, some of these kids, if they don't have school to go to, where are they going to end up? Where will they be? And I don't know. It's
The one thing I think of is if we just do the high school and don't do the elementary, what happens if we get 12 days into this and all of a sudden we have a bunch of cases in the elementary?
Yeah.
And then you got to start all over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that could easily happen. Just because you're going to be mixing on the bus, you're still in the buildings.
Yeah.
I think it's a very valid point on the teachers teaching. The kids aren't here, they can come here and teach and at least use the resources here.
Yeah.
But what are we going to do with the kids that don't have the equipment that they're supposed to have? That's not supposed to come now till what, December?
Yeah, December. It's very disappointing.
We do have some classes that have absolutely nothing.
But we'd be in the same boat if Rose came in tomorrow and said
Right.
you're shutting down.
Right, yeah.
So that's an unfortunate thing we can't.
What Kathleen has required of the elementary teacher is that they have on the Wednesday virtual, and again, this is up to Kathleen, but they have to make contact with their students. The expectation is that they'll have a contact, whether they Zoom in or the parent calls, the teacher calls the parent or the child, and that connection is made on it every Wednesday. And that's been working so far, that they give them the homework on Tuesday, they do a small review on Wednesday, either talking it through or following the directions again, and then they have homework and things to do on Wednesday. I don't know if that's the plan. We can do a little bit of worksheeting. There are a couple, do you want me to keep reading the comments? Because Julie Thompson says, what's the purpose of cohorting middle school right now then? If we aren't cohorting high school and we don't close the high school for infections like we do in elementary, why are we continuing to cohort in middle school? Paula Boland says, can we plan on 2-week cycles? If we go for a virtual plan after 2 weeks, then reevaluate. And Holly Nelson says, if we go virtual, will students be on live Zoom for the entire regular day, or will it be like Wednesday?
Yeah, I would just like to make a comment on that because somebody mentioned as far as one, having the technology, that's an issue. 2, Wednesdays right now, we knew to plan for that. Even if this doesn't go into effect on Monday, we're in a situation with very little notice, 2 full-time working parents, no daycare options. And so even if technology was available, who's facilitating this 5 days out of the week? It's just not realistic for most families. Some families are going to have that option. The vast majority are not. And so during that 2-week or however long this virtual experience lasts, those children are not getting the learning and the experience that they need. So that's my concern is, you know, to the best of our ability, we will make adjustments, we will flex work. But a 5-day schedule for a student that requires hands-on training is not something that's likely going to be the flexibility or the luxury that most working families have. And, you know, looking forward, you know, with, you know, having to go back face-to-face and then potentially be back to virtual, there's just schedules with work that just don't allow that flexibility. So we're looking to find daycare options, and daycare are not going to facilitate those learning lessons for us.
That's already been stated at a couple of daycare facilities.
Michelle Wobschall here again, if I could speak to that for just a minute. Kind of thinking about Holly Nelson's question about if we go virtual, will it be all day or like Wednesdays? And like Lori Pulvermacher just commented, having been trying to do virtual with my own classroom for a week now, trying to run a regular school day, it's a lot for them. So Olivia and I, my team partner, had already chatted if we do go virtual, what it would look like. And it would have to look more like a Wednesday, we believe, for our students to be successful. Considering, like Lori brought up, those concerns about having someone there all day to work with them. And B, just even my own students, sitting in front of that computer for all day is a lot for them, you know, and they have the distractions of home, which they don't have at school when they're sitting there. So it just kind of opens up a whole new thing. So having lived it for a week, I would say the option of having the regular school day all online all day is not in the best interest of the students.
At the elementary level?
Yes, yes. So having lived it, through it, that's my observation and my thoughts on it.
Well, we do have quite a few kids going virtual from the beginning of the school that are doing that right now.
And I will add, this is Michelle again, my partner wasn't able to register ahead of time, Olivia. So she's listening through my phone. She said that she has observed even her students, when I'm trying to teach with them, have a hard time focusing. So, you know, just at the elementary level, having done it for a week, I was already thinking if we don't go virtual, I'm gonna have to make changes somehow. And Olivia and I have been kind of chatting about that already anyhow, just on trying to do what's best for the kids and get them the essential materials they have to have in the best way possible for them.
Jenny Wilson unmuted yourself. Did you want to talk? No. Amber Fargen said, fortunately, it's only the K through 2nd grade that doesn't have the technology available. The content is pretty baseline. So I just pulled out my calendar. So today's the 7th, Monday is the 12th. So 2 weeks, if we were to close on Monday, the 12th, 2 full weeks would be through the 23rd, and the students could resume on the 26th. Unless you wanted to do the rest of October, that takes us through the 30th, that next week, and November 2nd would be the first day back. And again, I'm just throwing the dates out there for you.
26th is the annual meeting, right?
Uh-huh.
So it'd be, we have a meeting, we have a meeting after that anyways.
Yeah.
To
To reevaluate time, you're saying?
yeah, we've already got a meeting, so it's a perfect time to do it.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry, what?
She's saying, so if we have our meeting, annual meeting, the 26th, which we have a regular meeting after anyway, to accept the mill rates and stuff. So would we move it out to the 30th because we have that meeting Monday night?
Yep.
You're already out to the 30th before you know, that we could look at the numbers. I'm assuming we look at the numbers and we say we want a downward trend, we want a whatever. We say what we want. We're still at that point probably gonna have to get it okayed by Rose.
Yep.
Because, you know, if things are really bad or whatever, they have the final authority to.
And that would still give, you know, almost a week notice if we were gonna extend it. You know, that's the thing with the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'd almost have to make that decision a week into it.
Absolutely.
So that the parents can make the plans. So I think if we are gonna do virtual, it should be till the end of October.
I like the idea with, you know, if we're going 2 weeks, you know, not like when we were before where we were canceled for, you know, a long time. If we can modify that, especially in the elementary part, to not have the full day.
Yeah.
I think that helps a lot of the working parents not have to be there the full day,
Right.
you know, to watch over a daycare or whatever. If they can modify that, and they feel that it's not as good to have the kids try to sit in front of the screen, you know. The idea is to get back into school. So if that's what we're trying to do, you know, 2 weeks, if they can modify and do as much as they can in 3 weeks, I guess. That helps the working parent out. Sounds like it helps the teacher out. Sounds like it helps the student out. Seems like a pretty good compromise.
I think it should be said too that there's no one in this room that isn't sensitive to schedules and jobs being affected, and there may come a time where we do not have a choice. So this puts us ahead of the game in terms of exposure for what's happening in the building now. That could save us in the long run. Nobody knows though, you know?
I'm 100% sure there will be a time we won't have a choice.
Yeah.
I'm expecting that's next week.
Yeah.
The way that's going, and I just don't want to be in a situation.
So I
where
guess
before-
better off
Yeah.
where it's
to
just
have
bam.
planned.
Where it's planned, we can, I think,
Have anything? I think we have a plan, we can
yes.
prepare folks.
Yep.
And if that 2-3 weeks helps us slow things down a little bit, you know, maybe it avoids a long closure.
And we can do, I mean, we know we're doing cohorts already and in elementary especially, the teachers are in and out, but you know, there are things that we can do even while we're closed with the paraprofessionals. They can have a group of kids that they're also contacting and working with. So that can be, you know, 15 minutes one-on-one is like, it's like 45 minutes in a large group. That's just all there is to it. So if we can get those one-on-one things going with the paras, very useful for the kids.
So then they would also come into the building.
Yeah, that's part of my,
Oh,
part of this, that's after.
part two.
Part two,
To be continued.
yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, if there is a move to virtual, and considering the challenge that many parents are going to have with juggling lessons and availability to be, you know, doing it in a structured time, having those lessons or the time in which the class would be online recorded would be helpful. And then those recordings could be shared with the parents to then go through those lessons or view that material at a time that's more convenient.
Zoom has that availability. I use that at work all the time.
This is Coolidge.
Does Schoology have that ability?
I'm sorry, I was reading the comments, so I was
So-
only kind
So
of
the
listening.
ability
Coolidge
to, when they're doing the Zoom lesson, can that be recorded and then the parents
Yes.
watch it later?
Yes,
Access it whenever, so if they're having
Yes.
problems, they can go back and say, okay, let's review the lesson.
yes.
Steve?
Any Zoom can be.
Steve, hi, this is Adam. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
But the answer is yes, they can be recorded. We have a couple of students out medically right now, not COVID related, where teachers are recording Zooms and then simply sending them the links. Well, instead of sending an individual student a link, it can be posted in Schoology or can be emailed to a class group. So yes, that is very doable.
And also, the elementary have been encouraged all along to record short lessons and upload them into Schoology for parents to access later if they are unable to or their Wi-Fi doesn't connect well enough.
And Carolyn also mentioned paper-based assignments still work, and it lessens the online time, and it can be worked on anytime. So there's nothing wrong with paper and pencil. It's just not as efficient in this day and age, but with, especially the little ones, they're, you know, they need that, you know, the crayon on the paper to do something with it. So
I just, like, I understand that we can do the recordings of the Zooms and post them, but I just want the school board to understand that it's not a simple, easy thing. There is work involved in doing that, especially if you're recording, like myself, for instance. I have 7 classes a day. So it's not something that's super simple. It can be done, but it also does require extra time and effort as well.
Sarah Jones says to the paper-based homework, to K2 parents that work full-time and then have to come home and do 2 to 3 hours of homework with their children. Just another thought. Amber says another thing that may help is if we need to get paper-related homework, can we have it prepared ahead of time for the week so that we only have one trip to the school? And Juana says Doudna's virtual has it where they give you all the homework for the week and it is all due on Mondays and could also be an option if it's not happening yet.
I'm not trying to remove responsibility from the parent. I think I'm actually in probably a more flexible situation than many families. But when we went virtual last year, my daughter was in 4K and we struggled to keep up with 4K curriculum. And now she's in kindergarten. My heart breaks for families who have children in grades 2 through 8 that have to be more hands-on with their kids and have more complicated studies. So that's where, again, my concern falls is I understand the safety and everything else, but we have to have the reality that many of these students are going to miss these lessons, are going to miss the ability to have it taught to them in a way that makes sense to them. We as teachers, or we as parents, are not very good teachers. Our students are not very good students for us. And so again, I'm just sharing my experience with trying to keep up with the spring experience that we had and what that's going to look like going forward.
Questions, comments? Do something, it'd have to be in a form of a motion.
I make a motion to stay in school.
Moved by Mr. Manning, is there a second? Moved and seconded that we stay in school. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That was 3 ayes and 4 nays.
Mhm. And on the other hand, if there's no action, we continue the way we are.
Well, I am concerned with what has happened at the high school.
I think the numbers will go up if we shut down. Just because of what Kelly said. this is our safe place. But I get the other end too, you guys, I really do.
The problem comes from the exposure from the outside that we lose staff members. And my concern is I would love to have the kids in school. I know exactly what, it's affecting everybody and the strain it puts on working parents and all that. But, if this gets thrust upon us and we got to close again in an emergency situation, we really look foolish, People then are really thrown in a hard position because they've had no time to plan. And that's my worry, that we get shut. That's a very real, that's a very real thing that Rose could come in, Rose could call tomorrow and say, we think there's been too much exposure from this high school student. And then, we don't, it's just done and no one has any time to plan.
Well, I somewhat disagree with you there, Steve, because we have talked from the very beginning of the start of school that parents need to be prepared for this. I mean, we have from the very beginning said it's going to be a very different year. You have to have a backup plan in place. And I know for some that may be very hard to find, but it's not the same as when we got hit last March, where there was no forewarning as far as what's going on.
And the thing I would say is different between now and then was up until 2 weeks ago when we had 30 cases total since March. And now the numbers are, the numbers back then didn't necessarily warrant closing. The numbers now are.
Well, right, for what we had to
astronomical.
close for, they should definitely have said you can't be open.
I know I'm sitting here fighting emotion, like I feel like I'm gonna cry because I have high schoolers, I have a senior that she wants to be here, she wants to, and it feels like we're taking something away from our kids. And if you are part of this, I want to be the last one to take away, but it feels really irresponsible to just keep going. It feels like we need to do something proactively in this case. We're not the first in the area. We won't be the last, but it feels like we need to do something. Not a good feeling, but it feels like we need to do something.
So a couple of comments. Back to Adam's original question, at what point do we allow it to get to before we shut down? The spring was an awful experience schooling my two boys. However, they are both virtual now with Schoology and Zoom and all the other technology. It's been a great experience. Mrs. Bailey gives my youngest son a more flexible schedule since I'm working at home at the same time. Sometimes we don't get things done until evening. Whenever we can fit it in, it works well. Julie Thompson wants to know what happens to extracurricular activities right now. And Kirsten Rasmussen says, realistically, if we're basing this on county numbers, do you really think the numbers will go down? I see this being months, especially rolling into flu season. I get all sides and feel this is a no-win situation.
Agree with that completely. Doesn't matter what we decide. It's gonna be difficult for somebody,
I'm going to risk my internet connection here and just say, I agree with Summer. It's awful being the source of taking more things away from students than they've already been taken away. But I think we're also flirting with a real disaster here. I posed this question a couple of times, but I'm not disagreeing with this decision, but we have sent home single elementary classrooms for one infection. We do not cohort in the high school. I even said to our administrators, I can only police what I see at practice. I think we do a fantastic job at trying to keep kids as healthy and as safe as possible at practice, but we can only police what we see. I'm not going into a bathroom with girls. I'm not sitting at every interaction they have with their players and their classmates. To think that we are doing absolutely everything we can do is true. Is it enough? I don't think it is. I think having extracurriculars right now is irresponsible as well.
I would make the motion that we start a break on the 12th through the end of the month and we revisit it on the 26th, that we go virtual for the last 3 weeks of the month.
I'll second that.
Seconded to go virtual starting on the 12th through the 30th of October with reevaluation on the 26th. And moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay, didn't get the number. I was typing. So how many ayes?
We'll do roll call then.
Okay. Mr. Brisboy,
No.
Mrs. Variance,
No.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Manning, Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe,
Yes.
Mrs. Blazinski.
Yes.
The ayes have it, motion carries. To 5 then, discussion and possible action on paying support staff.
So I wanted to make sure that if we did anything in number 2, we had a discussion about, I'm sorry, I put a V for Mrs. Rowe instead of a Y.
Julie,
Yes.
who seconded that motion?
Mrs. Blazinski.
Thank you.
I think we have it figured out for support staff that if we close, the janitors are gonna clean. Some of them might actually take vacation. I don't know. They haven't been able to do that. The bus drivers would not have something to do. The parents can come in and work, like I said, individually with students or in small group with students. So I think we definitely can, as long as everybody's healthy, do that. What do you want to do about, like, the bus drivers wouldn't be working?
Will we be delivering meals like Richland is doing?
We could.
I mean, are we gonna be offering?
Drivers should get paid. We
I
cannot
think we
risk
got
that.
to be consistent with what we did last
Yeah.
month.
Yes.
They do.
But we gotta be consistent and, you know, the standpoint, if we want to start not treating bus drivers, do we really have the, you know, we don't have a lot of bus drivers as it is, and we need to treat them with respect. And same with the other staff, the paraprofessionals, the aides, they need to be, and their staff, they should be paid.
That money's in the budget.
Yes.
Yes.
What about, it would be a nice option though for, if we could figure out delivery for meals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That could potentially help a lot of families out.
that'd be great.
We do have a couple of staff members that when they close, their children also go to school here and they also don't have a place for their children. So 1 or 2 of them really, really want to work. They want to bring their kid in and have them just work in the room virtually.
I know both at Riverdale and River Valley, you're able to, staff members can bring their children and a para is in charge of, they essentially have like a 1-room daycare, which follows all the same rules about masking, and so that the staff members can work and be available for virtual students.
Michelle here, Michelle Wabshall. Would it be an option for staff members with students to teach from home and come in on Wednesdays like we have been? Because most of us have adults here with our children then. Could we teach virtually from home and come in every Wednesday and still get our PLC time, still get our team planning time on Wednesdays, but then teach from home and be home with our kids the other 4 days?
I would prefer not to do that. The idea is that if you're here, then we are in charge of your internet and your, everything's going through our the internet. I think it's better that the teachers be in the building. That way they can be here. If they have any technology issues, Animal will be here. We did have a few issues last year with teachers not doing what they needed to be doing. Now, if they're exposed or need to quarantine, definitely. I don't have any issue with that.
Any other discussion on that?
Do you need a motion to continue paying support staff or?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd make a motion that we continue to pay support staff through the break.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Mr. Blazinski, seconded by Mr. Brisbois to pay support staff throughout the closure.
Can we do slash bus driver? They're
Yeah,
considered-
support staff.
They're considered support
Yeah,
staff,
everybody.
janitors, everybody.
Yep.
Yep.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Blazinski,
Yes.
Mrs. Variance,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Manning,
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe,
Yes.
Mrs. Blazinski.
I just said
Oh,
yes.
sorry. Did I say Mr. Brisbois? Mr. Brisbois.
Yeah.
You get to vote twice, no, and Susan. you get twice. Anything else on that then?
Could we get some clarification on extracurricular activities?
Oh, so if the school is closed, no extracurriculars? Because some schools aren't doing it that way.
Some schools are not. Bosco is, my wife told me Bosco is going forward with that extracurriculars. They decided to leave.
Lafarge is still playing too.
As well as River Valley.
And Richland Center said they decided to take the first week completely off and then starting a week later, they were doing practices, but I think they weren't doing games for 2 weeks. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what I
We were
remember
gonna
them saying.
reevaluate on the 12th.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how you can justify that and not justify having face-to-face education. I'm sorry.
I would agree. I can't. I mean, I understand the social emotional learning part of being in a sport, but all of our high school students got to participate in their 3 sports up to this point.
Not
And,
true.
you know,
We did not have spring sports last year.
right, and we didn't even have spring sports last year. So at least we got to participate.
Oh,
From now, cross country, volleyball.
Oh, I said 3, not spring. Sorry, it's kind of hard sometimes. So yeah, I'm all about everybody staying home and getting healthy and nobody being sick and then coming back and doing it again, you know. Doing a physical exercise, they need it when they're here.
we have activities planned well into, Mr. Tomey's not on, is he? We have
Mr.
activities-
Tomey?
I know we have football games in November. I'm not sure about volleyball.
Zach's here, but he's putting Sarah to bed. Sorry.
Zach, summary of the question.
What about Friday's football game? Are we done starting now or Monday?
Monday.
Monday, so that means the girls can play on Saturday as well. They have a game Saturday morning.
The game would be on for Friday, coach.
Thank you.
All right, so then there was offer furloughs from Julie Thompson. What if parents are able to work from home, question mark. What about working from home if you have younger children not in school on days when your spouse works? Parents also have children here. We also have to have a plan that if a teacher is quarantined but isn't too sick, they can teach from home. Oh, never mind, Julie just covered that. So our extracurricular is done now. That's David, he just asked that. Kyle says, will the daily schedule we have in place remain in place for the 6-12 during virtual time? Oh. Zach wasn't really here. He was putting Claire to bed, so sorry. He couldn't answer your question. Yeah, and if you have kids or households who are positive on the team, should we be playing other teams? That's a really good question. But you already said, I know, I should repeat that, but no sports when we're closed.
We didn't say that.
We haven't voted on that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
There hasn't been the motion.
Knowing there's events in November, that does not do the kids any good to be totally off base for 3 full weeks either. Is there a scenario where we take a week or 2 off and come back with practicing the third week for healthy students?
It's really not any rules because we see such a diversity amongst the schools already.
Right.
And some are still having extracurricular despite being closed, so there must not be. And the rules are either to be set by the county health department or by, I don't know, WIA, or we haven't heard anything on WIA yet. So I would
And
say
in our policy, it's canceled. Well, school's not canceled. We're doing it virtual.
that's true. And I think that's the caveat they use to get around it.
Yeah.
That it is virtual. They're still attending school, but I would anticipate that they would be, I would say, I consider that the week of the 20, starting on the 26th, Monday the 26th, that they could practice.
I would agree with that, Rob.
Yeah, I'll move that, that practice, that there will be no extracurricular activities from the 12th, beginning on Monday, October 12th through the actual games through the 30th. But practice can resume for the sports, for extracurricular, starting on Monday, the 26th.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to cancel all games throughout the closure with practices restarting on the 26th. Is that right?
Correct.
By Mr. Brisbois, second by Mrs. Rowe, sorry. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Variance,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Manning,
No.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe,
Yes.
Mrs. Blazinski,
Yes.
Mr. Brisboy.
Yes.
Julie, would you go to the chat again?
Read out the chat again? Okay, yes, I have to put an N here quick. You want me to read what in the chat? I read all the way down to Carolyn says, there's a good chance that there are asymptomatic positives on any team with a positive player household.
And I would actually like clarification on her question above that.
If you have kids or households who are positive on the team, should we be playing other teams?
Well, we won't be.
So now we have a situation here where we're taking 2 complete weeks off of practice even, and the 14 days is supposed to be enough for quarantine. So, you know, and then there's.
And we play Saturday.
And then,
Yeah, they play this Saturday.
well, yeah, but we haven't started until, well,
Right,
oh,
but we
I see,
have them
okay,
on
okay,
Friday.
sorry, got it, yes, sorry,
Right.
okay.
I mean, I think that, I don't know, that's such a hard, I hate to take that away from the girls in particular, because I know that's what we're talking about.
Is there a game Thursday too? Because isn't there
No,
pet
That's
band?
already been canceled.
That one got canceled already.
Okay,
I would think that the team that we're playing on Saturday needs to be notified. And I would say that the team we're playing football on Friday night also needs to be notified, and then that team would make that decision. That's the respectful thing to do, that we do have a high school.
Yeah, Friday night and Saturday morning. I mean, that was probably the best way to go about it, is just to tell them that we've had a positive case. That person is obviously not, everyone who should be quarantined is quarantined, and let them decide. we're going there. It's not like they're coming into our building.
Yeah, it's an away game. But I think they should have the
Yeah,
choice.
you know, this is Carol.
And Vernon County their health department may say, no, don't let them in.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
They're stricter than ours.
You know, I think you just have to be prepared how you're going to answer the question if you have 5 kids on the team turn positive the day after the event. That's kind of how you have to live through this pandemic. And if you're okay with that, if you're okay with that phone call to say, you know, wherever you're going, we need to inform you that 5 kids on the team tested positive the day after the event, then you go ahead with it. If you're not comfortable with that, then probably not a great idea if they're a positive person on the team. So it's better to think in a pandemic, what you're going to do tomorrow if today you're positive.
And I would even,
who did I expose? Go ahead.
I was even going to say, what if the shoe was on the other foot? And we found out Sunday morning that Hillsborough played again. We were in their building and Hillsborough had a positive player on their team.
Yeah, I don't think we should be playing on Friday and Saturday. I mean, I truly believe that it's just about time for coaches to start thinking about that, because they can only have so many games in. But I don't think this is going to be gone by the end of October. That they may want to think about moving things to spring.
I guess I'm trying to understand.
No, right.
That's for the.
This is Melissa, and I'm just asking because obviously we have to be very careful what we talk about who's positive with HIPAA. But if, and maybe tomorrow things will change because I'm not on the inside track of what's going on. But if the student that was positive that's on the team, if we've done the quarantining, tracing and everything, and we didn't feel that any of their teammates warranted having to be quarantined or sent home, then I guess, how are we worried about that teammate? If we're letting them come to school, then why are we worried about them playing against another team? If we're worried enough that they're going to spread COVID to the other team, then we shouldn't be having them at school either.
That's true. We did say Monday. I mean,
But we didn't say Monday. We said Monday because it was more convenient for the families and the teachers to get ready for Monday. All of a sudden your children are home 24/7.
that's true. But we also need to give the kids that are participating that, you know, that's very important to their social, mental.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that we've gotten no feedback on this particular now with the high school student from public health.
Right.
And that's the issue I have, because if we are collectively, not just in this instance, but even moving forward, if we are again relying on the honesty and accuracy of adults who are not public health officials, I'm concerned about that. We have public health officials for a reason, because that's their expertise. And they're not giving us any advice here. I'm concerned about that.
Dr. Keller typed in, if you're not closing on school till Monday, then they should be allowed to play Friday.
We are allowing them to play Thursday and Friday together.
I think we should leave it up to the school.
The opposing school.
I agree with what Linda said, that notify.
Yes, we would want the same thing for us playing, or not have the choice to say, okay, there's a potential that, you know, if asymptomatic people on there too that we don't know about.
The best thing we could do is have Zach reach out tomorrow and give them our scenario.
Yeah.
You know, we had a positive, we see the rise in the county. We've decided on Monday to go virtually. How do you feel about a Saturday or a Friday, Saturday competition, especially because it's a single district, it should make it.
Yeah.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second? I'm not in the sports world of things, and I don't know what all the protocols are for all the sports, but just putting it out there that a lot of the CDC recommendations are talking about in instances where there's that vigorous exercise, you're having more of those respiratory droplets in the air. And if these players are in the 6 feet for the 15 minutes of time, to me, that is a lot higher risk situation than attending school with masks on Thursday and Friday. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Like I said, I don't know what all the protocols are in place for mask wearing for sports, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you, Mrs. Penfield.
Yes, that was Mrs. Penfield.
I can see the names, that's.
Night,
I might have figured it out.
this is Kathleen. I just want to speak to the fact that the positive high school student does not know where she contracted it. And as Julie said, and as Carolyn said, if we have one positive in 150 high school students, you know there are other asymptomatics that are untested.
Just leaves me back to why are we coming to school tomorrow then? I mean, can we even do anything with this? Like give her, like, it's not on the agenda. Can we give feedback? Do we make a motion? How does this particular item work?
I think it all entails in-person schooling and,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
our ability to do that. You know, to me, if, you know, we're confident that the person has had limited exposure to other people. And, you know, we're not quarantining other people tomorrow anyways. Then telling the other school, if the other school is completely fine with it or would not be fine with it, you know, in my opinion, we're going to school those 2 days anyways.
Yep.
You know, if we felt that there was other people that needed to be quarantined, they would be out anyways.
And Rose could change that decision tomorrow when they have that discussion. You know, we might not be in school. You know, kids will probably already be here, but they, you know, they may not be here on Friday. So
I would move, giving the information we have now, that we have Zach contact the other school and we essentially put the ball in their court. Kids are coming Thursday and Friday to tell them they can't do what they love, even though you're coming to see one person. Doesn't seem appropriate to me. I'm sure there are a bunch of people disagree.
So you moved that?
Yes.
Okay.
I did. Yeah.
Then moved by Mrs. Rowe.
So the motion is that we're allowing them to play Friday and Saturday.
If the other school is
okay with
with
it.
that, we're informing the other school.
Right,
If they're okay with it.
I'll second that.
And second by Mrs. Rowe, second by Mrs. Blazinski, that we go forward with a game on Friday night and Saturday, informing the other school. And depending on their decision, play those games. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Manning,
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe,
Yes.
Mrs. Blazinski,
Yes,
Mr. Brisboy.
Yes.
Mrs. Variance.
Yes.
Anything else on those subjects? If not, or for your case.
I do see another question that is good. When will the discussion be happening tomorrow with Rose? That was a question from Holly Nelson in the chat.
Well, we'll call her in the morning.
Yeah, I guess it probably depend on her schedule.
Her schedule, and yeah, I would say it's kind of her availability.
She's a farmer,
I
so
kind of thought it was a 24/7 job when you're unfortunately in that position, and she wasn't available tonight, so.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none, then 6 is adjourned to closed session under Wisconsin statute 19.851C for consideration, employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which governmental body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility. 6.1, discussion regarding the performance evaluation of a district employee, teaching staff, administration, and or coaching staff. Be in closed session no less than 5 minutes, but maybe longer.
I move to go,
Been moved by Mr. Brisbois to go into closed session. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Rowe. Roll call.
Mrs. Ferriant?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Manning, Mr. Manning, sorry. Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Blazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Brisbois?
yes.
I'm sorry you had a mask on, I couldn't tell.
She's good with it.
All right, I'm gonna pause the recording and then we'll
Miss-
go.
Shut that door behind me and checked it is relocked, so.
All right, thank you.
Motion to reconvene in open session.
Holy cow, that was fast.
For a second.
I'll second.
And Mrs. Ferriant, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I didn't get the first.
Mrs. Peterson.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ferriant.
Okay, they're back in session. Curious to hear what they say.
Michelle, we can hear you.
Then there's no action from closed session.
No action.
No action. Okay, then 9 is adjourned.
Also move.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Blazinski, second by Mrs. Ferriant to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you, everybody, for your time.
Remember?
So did they, all those Zoom people that waited, did they hear that there was no action?
No action afterwards, everybody.
Is 104 open?